Hi, I'm Christopher Perrin, and welcome to this first chapter of God's Great Covenant, Chapter 1. That means we're starting at the beginning, and if we're starting at the beginning, we are starting at the book which is called beginning, which is Genesis. Genesis is just a Greek word which means beginning or origin. And of course, at the beginning of this book, which is the beginning, we read the phrase, in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, a very famous verse indeed, a very famous chapter. In fact, the book of Genesis is a very famous book throughout, of course, biblical history and church history, but all through literary tradition and history. It's a kind of a touchstone book. So, welcome to the study of the book of Genesis as we begin the study of the Old Testament. Well, the book of Genesis, there's some 50 chapters in the book of Genesis. It tells a good bit of history of starting with creation, and then of course Adam and Eve and their early life, and Cain and Abel and so on, the patriarchs, all the way through to discuss the 12 sons of Jacob and then the life of Joseph. It's a fascinating book, and there's much that is contained in the book of Genesis that forecasts what's going to happen throughout the teaching of Scripture, throughout biblical history. So it's a fascinating study, and I'm so glad that you're here to study with me. We have a memory verse that we will be covering each chapter, and the memory verse for chapter 1, we might as well mention it now. It's not too difficult to memorize. It's a short verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's Genesis 1:1. I bet you could repeat that after me right now and probably remember it forever. Some of you have already learned this verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Chapter 1, verse 1 from Genesis. Well, let me familiarize you a bit with the first page of this chapter, which is called the memory page. And in each of our chapters, we'll have a memory page. The memory page is set up to show you the most important information that you want to learn during the course of the chapter. It's not that you just go to the memory page and memorize it. It will introduce you to important concepts and key facts that you will want to take into your heart and mind or memorize during the course of the week. So you can keep going back to it. During the course of the week, you may turn back to this first page to keep reviewing these important key facts. They'll be retaught or represented to you in the narrative. Well, so if you look at the memory page, you'll see there'll be a lesson scope, and I'll just circle some of this here at the beginning for you. Maybe this will, there we go. So Genesis 1 is a lesson scope. There's a read to me section, which is Genesis chapter 1. It's a chapter worth reading, and in a little bit I'll read some of it to you, but you can read it to yourself or have someone read it to you. There's also a theme, and the theme for this chapter is God creates by the power of His words. He speaks, and then things happen. You see the memory verse, which I've already quoted to you. That's the second or third part of the chapter. I guess if we really are counting, there's a lesson scope. Number 1, read to me. Number 2, the theme and the memory verse. And then with each chapter, you'll also see a key facts section. And the key facts essentially presents to you in a distilled form, a clear, simplified form, the important facts to learn during the course of this chapter study. And they are the 7 days or 6 days here of creation. This is famous as well. 6 days God created the heavens and the earth and all that live within them, including man and woman. And then on the 7th day He rested. So here they are, the first 6 days. Day 1, He created light. Day 2, the sky or heavens and the waters. Day 3, the earth, seas, and plants. Day 4, the sun and the moon. Day 5, the fish and birds. And day 6, animals and people. And then you'll see some other important things to remember underneath this section. And they happen to be 3 important words. The first one is ex nihilo. The Latin word ex nihilo means out of nothing, because God created something, that is, the world, out of nothing. That's pretty amazing, and that's a very important concept in philosophy and in biblical teaching or theology, that God actually can create something out of nothing, creation ex nihilo, by the power of his word. The next word is Genesis, and that's a Greek word that means beginning, and I mentioned that already. And then there's the word Elohim. This is a Hebrew word, and it is a plural Hebrew name for God, which means mighty, strong, and majestic. Elohim. The word El in Hebrew can also mean God, but Elohim is this plural version of that word. It means God as well. You might have heard that sometimes kings and queens in the past would use the royal we, and maybe you've even heard some friends or your parents use the royal we. That's when a person who is singular uses the pronoun we, like, "We are not happy with that, are we?" said the king. "We may have to put someone in the dungeon," said the evil king. Using we to really refer to himself. So instead of saying I, he uses the word we. Well, Elohim is plural, but it refers to one God. We'll see how important that is a little bit later. Then you'll see the next section in this chapter, on this page, is a section that says, who is God? God is Elohim, the mighty God, who creates everything from nothing. And when he speaks, things happen just as he says, by the power of his word. He speaks things into existence. That's the kind of God revealed in the book of Genesis. Now, if you look back to the key facts chart, I want to show you something that is kind of fascinating. Look at day 1. Day 1, God created the light. Day 2, sky and waters. Day 3, earth, seas, and plants. Interestingly, the days horizontally across from those, the days across from 1, 2, and 3 are 4, 5, and 6. The days on the right-hand side of the column over here show a kind of relationship to the days on the first column. For example, on day 1, God creates the light. On day 4, the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon actually are light, right? It's from the sun that we get light. So it's almost as if the sun and the moon are the governors of the light, govern light and control light. And then same thing with fish and birds on day 5. The fish and birds, as it were, rule in the sky and in the waters. So there's this ruling or governing relationship. And then day 6, animals and people rule or govern the earth, the seas, and the plants. That's where they live. That's what they rule over. Some theologians have noticed this as a kind of interesting, almost poetic relationship between that which is governed and that which governs. At least that's an interesting observation. That will conclude our lesson and our introduction to this first chapter of God's Great Covenant, a study of the Old Testament. I'll see you next as we go into the narrative and some other items relative to studying the book of Genesis. See you soon.